If you look at John Lennon's songs from the late 60s through into the 70s as a document of his psychological state, it makes an interesting case study. And you can see an odd conflict between an unusually keen self-awareness and an equally extreme hedonism. And he seems to have swung from one extreme to the other. Is it possible that the real answer to this apparent battle is to stop conducting it as a battle and find the resolution where both sides have a valuable role to play in achieving a common goal? Here I'm going to argue that we can go even further and say that a synergy between mindfulness and enlightened hedonism may in fact be the most effective way there is to craft a healthier sense of self and make a genuine leap forward, because of how it allows you to escape from the negative feedback loop where you can't imagine joy until you feel it. This can be formalized into a session of mixed method meditation, where each session consists of 3 phases. The first being mindfulness meditation, where you stop trying to escape from the real causes of your limitation, but spend time observing and being with them. The second phase is dynamic meditation, either an extended trance dance or a shorter high-intensity sprint to generate elevated mood and celebrate your future success around the issues you identified in your mindfulness. The third, conducted either during or immediately after the dynamic phase, depending on whether you did a dance or a sprint, is a cross between transcendental meditation and creative visualization, where you use your window of more optimistic, elevated mood as a dreamtime space where things revert to an unformed state so you can recraft your sense of self around the issue in question, and you visualize the essence of this new quality as a magical crystal being enshrined inside your body. Then you can return to the everyday clothed in this new energy of success. Whenever you want to have more of this quality, you just remember the crystal that's inside you. John's song Across the Universe, written in early 1968, was about transcendental meditation. He was making progress with this practice at the time and was taking a break from drugs. It's about staying in your center and just letting the stream of mind chatter drift through your open mind. Why do we then find him not too long after starting to use heroin and writing something as hedonistic as "Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey"? His 1969 song, "I Want You, She's So Heavy," gives us a clue. While it starts off sounding like a blues number, it descends into something darker and seemingly quite crazed. The "I want you" that at first seems merely erotic soon becomes neurotic. If attraction becomes crazed need, you can bet that there's more than natural animal instincts at play, and that it's rooted in some kind of psychological suffering. "Don't Let Me Down" from the same period demonstrates that same type of intense need. The screams that John does in both these songs can be called primal screams. But do they resolve anything? "I Want You, She's So Heavy" still ends up spiraling around in a maelstrom that goes round and round without resolving, and in the end just cuts off instead of finding any kind of closure. Primal screams produce an endorphin release, but if you don't then use that to move to a more positive narrative, it's little more than a temporary respite. Then in his 1970s song, "Mother," He stops seeking to blot out the real cause of the neurosis and finally looks it in the face, the sense of loss of his mother and the abandonment of his father leaving. Again, we have the primal scream, but this time he's identified the real root of that suffering. But why then in 1974 does he come out with a return to a much more basic hedonistic philosophy with the song Whatever Gets You Through the Night? He was almost there with Mother, but there was a key problem. The song itself repeats the negative narrative again and again, which is dangerous because it can serve only to reinforce the negative feelings. If something like primal screaming is used to create an endorphin release, this is only of long-term benefit if the uplifted feeling created by that release is used to generate a more positive narrative to replace the negative one, so we can move on. Think back to the earlier Beatles song, Baby You're a Rich Man, where, full of flower power optimism, John sang, "Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be?" And now that you've found another key, what are you going to play? But there is something else which I think is going on here. The two sides to John that seem such a contrast and make him a paradoxical figure, the intelligent self-awareness and the extreme hedonism, would perhaps have only ended their war if some way was found for them to work together for the same aim. I would suggest that our hedonistic side is bound to rear its head, if repressed, because it's actually there for a reason. And when this part of us finds its right place, it actually adds to the whole, making it better. And this is the lead into what I want to talk about in this video and the method I want to offer up. We have a tendency to treat mindfulness as a complete self-contained solution, but I want to argue that it can work really well when it's used as part of a bigger method which, believe it or not, actually relies on a certain type of hedonism, not just as an add-on but as a vital component. It's safe to say that mindfulness sits at one end of a spectrum and hedonism at the other. There's nothing wrong with a hedonistic philosophy though if it's an enlightened one. The purpose of all existence is to feel better and better because existing is what existence does, and feeling better means existing better. Where the problem lies is with a hedonism that only has its eyes on immediate gratification and short-term solutions. This inevitably leads to seeking temporary respite rather than long-term solutions to upset and low mood, and it spirals into dysfunctional, addictive behaviors that soon lead to increased suffering overall. Mindfulness is all about being present with what's currently going on with yourself. So rather than seeking to flee from inner causes of suffering, you increase your awareness of those thoughts and feelings as they rise to understand better how they are affecting you. What are those feelings? What are the thoughts and beliefs and self-images that lie behind them? Increasing your awareness of those thoughts allows you to detach from them to some degree because you're observing them rather than just being driven by them. But once you become aware of self-images that need healing, what you need is an injection of positivity, enthusiasm, and optimism in order to craft a version of that self-image that will produce better mood. This is the catch-22, and it's compounded because low confidence and poor self-image in that area are likely to be self-fulfilling, causing poor performance in that area, which then seems to justify the poor self-image, and round it goes. You need to heal the self-image in order to feel more joy, but you need to feel more joy in order to heal the self-image. And that's why I ask you to open your mind here and consider what might seem like an unorthodox suggestion, which is that a certain type of hedonism is actually the way out of this catch-22. But it needs to be enlightened hedonism. That means not only are you using it intentionally, in a way that has long-term benefit, but also that the methods you're using are those that are least liable to addiction and abuse. The first point to make here is that we already have an inbuilt system which works in this way. It just needs a bit of work to use this system properly. The system in question is that of our emotions. We sometimes seem to have this idea as regards the so-called negative emotions that they are a form of suffering in themselves and that they're almost like toxins that need to be released in the sense of pushed out of us. But what follows the healthy and effective and appropriate release of an emotion is an endorphin release. That's why we talk about feeling better after a good cry. It's why we might get a buzz from some angry, distorted music. It's why primal screams seem to offer therapeutic potential. And then during that endorphin release, you have a boost that, if you use it right, allows you a brighter space in which to think more positively about the matter, and it also gives you wings to transcend the situation, to let go of what it's best to let go of, to forget what it's best to forget, and to patch up the damage to your self-image, embracing a more positive narrative. Some other things that cause endorphin releases are exercise, rapturous appreciation of beautiful music, and the trance response to repetitive rhythm. You can combine all of this in trance dance to emotional and uplifting trance music. The trance effect, the emotional fluidity, the exercise, the rapturous immersion in beautiful music, all these fuse elegantly together.
As you listen to music today, I don't know if you listen to the radio a lot or if you listen mostly to records, but what are things that you see that you think are good or bad?
Well, I like the disco music that's out now, which is great music. I like the thing that happened in Jamaica called reggae. But the music has to change because they keep inventing new things. They'll probably be playing gurch blobs and zakdungas, right? You know, they'll have new instruments.
The word endorphin comes from a shortening of endogenous morphine. These are the body's own opiates, and because they're endogenous, they are not chemically addictive in the way that exogenous opiates are. But just as mindfulness alone, without enlightened hedonism, can give you the awareness of the source of the suffering, but not the enthusiastic jubilance needed to correct it, equally, even this non-chemically addictive type of hedonism becomes little more than a temporary respite, with the added benefit of helping physical fitness, if it's not used to correct the issues that have come to light from mindful awareness. So what you want to do is remember to use that more pleasurable, optimistic state as a vantage point from which to look again at the issue and reframe your perspective on it, and weave more positivity into the self-image that you hold around that issue. What we arrive at then is a process where you start with some mindfulness meditation, during which you're simply present with what's going on with yourself rather than turning away from it, and where your increased awareness from that mindfulness meditation is then used to set an intention about what you're going to use the upcoming space of enlightened hedonism for. Then you create that space and remember to use it in the way you previously intended. And there is a visualization that works well here once you've done that, based on practices which totemic cultures use in trance initiation. The new or enhanced quality of self-image that you generate is seen as being congealed into a magical stone, a crystal, and then this magical talisman, this radiant source of power, is brought inside the body and placed there. You can imagine it as a jewel being added to an item of jewelry, a crown, a necklace of some such. The initiate is then raised as if being brought back to life, recreated from a death-like state, and they are now conjoined at a level of essence with all those others that have gone to this same level. So that's the basic idea. Next, let's drill down a little more into the details and what this might entail at a practical level. Regarding the mindfulness, I don't want to say too much about the practice itself, as of course it's been covered well elsewhere in many places. This part of the session may be best done without music. You're not trying to escape from anything here, but to become aware of it. One thing I do want to stress, though, is that the awareness is about what's going on with you in the now, in your thoughts and feelings. Don't try to uncover repressed memories in order to piece together some narrative about what caused the problem in the mists of childhood, because there's a very good chance that such a narrative might work counterproductively, making you feel even worse. What we're ultimately seeking here by the end of the session is not to uncover the cause of the wounding, but to reach the deeper, unwounded paradise of the primordial infant, an Atlantis of treasures at the bottom of the waters of emotion. But at this stage, the awareness you're looking for concerns what's going on with you now. You're looking to stay in your calm center and observe the thoughts and feelings that arise. So be present with it, look at it, see how it affects you. I can't give a precise time for how long to spend doing this. It depends how long it takes you to formulate a sense of what aspects of self-image you want to enhance. For the sake of argument, let's say if you're looking to fit it into an overall session of minimum length, you could see what comes out of just 10 minutes of proper mindfulness focus. Next, out of this, I want you to set a clear, simple intention, and it's not generally a particularly complex matter. Once you've identified what the issue is, the life area it concerns, it's not hard to work out what the enhanced, more positive and uplifted and confident version of the self-image around that issue would be in theoretical terms. You don't have to yet feel what that would feel like at this stage, because that would be a waste of energy and willpower when you're not in the optimistic space. That's what the next phase is for. This is my point. Success is about timing. And the next phase is the generation of the endorphin release. You have a choice here. You can do some low impact dancing over an extended session, 1 to 1.5, maybe even 2 hours. And because it's taking place over a long period of time, there's the potential to get into some quite deep shamanic states. Here you're looking to master the skill of concentrating on the music to the exclusion of other thoughts. It's about immersing yourself deep in the groove and in the music. The other option is to do some very high intensity exercise over a much shorter period of time. This has been shown to be the quickest way to bring about an endorphin release, but the way you operate with these two methods is a little different. With drawn out low impact dancing, you can work with the self-image while you're doing it. You get into a groove, into a pattern, and the dancing just takes care of itself, and each time you get a rush of joy, you simply remember to use it to visualize an uplifted, enhanced version of the self-image you decided to work with. Use it to celebrate your future success in that area, to imprint your reward system with the idea that this is how it will feel to have that success. And this will create increased motivation to get there, because you can't have optimized motivation if you're working against your reward system. So you don't even need to stop dancing while you do this, but you can if you want. If you're doing the high intensity version though, it works a little differently. You won't be able to think about anything while you're doing it other than not falling over. But you'll have a window of about 15 to 20 minutes immediately afterwards in which you have an endorphin buzz, which you can then use during meditation. So you're going to sprint like crazy on the spot for a short period and then switch to beatless, calm, meditative ambient drone music, and you're going to sit cross-legged or lie down and go back into meditation like you were doing before the exercise when you were being mindful, but now it's more of a creative visualization as you conjure up positive self-images around the issue you identified. Use slow breathing to activate the parasympathetic response. As regards the music you listen to during the dynamic exercise itself, the same type can be used for both the low and high impact options. Trance music generally has a BPM faster than walking, but slower than jogging, but which is just right for stepping to the beat, doing the kind of dance where you leave the ground between each step. And this same BPM is also right for high intensity sprinting on the spot, the difference being that you're stepping twice for each beat rather than once. If you opt for the high impact sprint, you probably won't be able to keep it up for the whole track. You might do it in the first sections, have a breather during the ambient breakdown that these tracks always have, and then you might switch to dancing of the slower kind, just one step per beat when the drop comes, with more little bursts of sprinting to keep it high impact. Another choice you have is about the genre of trance music. If you're working with something around which there's a lot of emotion that needs to be felt, you can opt for the genre known as emotional trance. This is quite similar to uplifting trance, but it has more of the rapturous, beautiful, soaring passages that aren't necessarily bubblegum sweet, but may have more of a poignancy. If, however, you're not in a space where you need to work through darker emotions, you might get more out of uplifting trance, where there's a greater focus on the bright, positive, sweet side of the emotions in a greatly amplified form. Then there are some tracks which have elements of both genres. So the next point is that this process isn't just for healing deep wounds. It's also just a way to go to your next level with something in your life. You may want to progress from okay to good, from getting by to thriving. Here, the mindfulness is not so much about looking deep suffering in the eye, it's just about becoming more aware of what's holding you back and setting intentions for the next level. And the dynamic phase here becomes very much about celebrating that future success. There's actually another way that mindfulness and high intensity exercise can work together towards the same goals. When you do this type of exercise, your body and brain develop so as to be better able to relax after rises in adrenaline. And mindfulness meditation kind of does the same thing, as you're training your mind to be better at coming back to its center rather than being thrown off balance. So if you're doing both, you're giving yourself the best training for being able to calm down quickly and act with poise as you go through life. To reiterate the steps of this high intensity version, you're looking to do at least 10 minutes mindfulness meditation in quietness, in which you become aware of what's going on with you. Setting an intention based on that awareness to craft an enhanced sense of self. A sprint on the spot to an emotional or uplifting trance track, a transcendental meditation to drone music immediately after the sprint. You're going back to the Dreamtime in which things are not yet fully formed, so that you can be reformed, painted back into being in an enhanced state. While here, you use the uplifted mood to creatively visualize the enhanced self-image. And then ending by visualizing that essence congealed into a crystal and placed inside you followed by being raised back to life, reborn from a death-like state, coming back from dreamtime into the human world. You can, if you choose, close off the whole thing by listening to some music which is not shamanic, which is of this world, but which still embodies the chosen quality, but not in a dreamtime type of a way, but in a more of a suited and booted, dressed for success type of a way.
Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything's right. I said, hey, I put some new shoes
If you can think of something suitable. To summarize then, my argument here has been that mindfulness and hedonism are not the irreconcilable opposites you might have imagined them to be, but rather they can actually work synergistically together. I'd even go as far as to say they are each incomplete without the other. We need to become mindful of what's causing suffering rather than trying to blot it out with short-term hedonism. But conversely, without ways to activate the pleasure principle, we're greatly limited in what we can do with that awareness to change things. We're stuck in a catch-22 until we find a way to bring in a big dose of well-being. It's really when we combine mindful awareness with enlightened hedonism to go to dreamtime in order to repaint our self-image into being that we can really come on in leaps and bounds.